Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask me on Instagram, which I'll flip in right here, and basically he wants to know, is there any purpose to maxing out in the gym? Is there any reason to do it? Should you be doing it? When I talk about people hitting training maxes every day on like Bulgarian systems, what am I talking about? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Let's do a little bit of crafting and let's talk about it. All right, the short of it, no, I don't think anyone should ever hit a true max in the gym outside of a competitive environment. It serves no purpose, it's counterproductive, it's dangerous, and it might actually hurt your ability to even compete in powerlifting, and I'm going to get into some of that in a minute. Now, there's a big difference between a true max and a training max so that people understand what we're talking about. A true max means you are putting 100% of your effort into it. It's the most you can possibly lift, hopefully while using a meet legal technique. I'll get to that in a minute. A lot of guys who do gym maxes without a coach watching them and telling them what to do end up doing true maxes that are meet illegal, and they ingrain bad habits that get them disqualified in competition. And they actually find that, unfortunately for them, their gym lift is sometimes 50 or 60 pounds heavier than what they're actually capable of doing at a competition with judges there. And it usually comes to a big surprise to a lot of rookie powerlifters the first time they go to a meet, and their 300-pound bench press turns into a 250-pound bench press, and they actually have to perform it correctly because they have no practice performing it correctly with heavy weight. So they go in completely unprepared, and they don't realize that their gym lifts don't equal what a powerlifter does if they're not using meet legal forms. Oftentimes, again, it is much, much lighter than they think it is and what they can really do. So that's a true max. A training max is what we call basically around 90% of your max. Meaning when people are hitting training maxes, such as Bulgarian training to where they're maxing every day, a training max is not a competition max. What you do with a training max, you don't psych yourself up, you don't slap yourself, you don't scream, you don't do any of that stuff. A training max is what you can come in and comfortably hit the heaviest possible weight that you can comfortably hit with perfect form, or at least good form, and without the bar slowing down. Meaning if you grind it at all and it's just not an instantaneous lift, it is not a training max. It's heavier than a training max. It should be one smooth pull on the deadlift. It should be one clean press on the bench press. The bar, if you stop for a split second near the lockout, one side slows down a little bit, that's more than a training max. You went heavier than a training max. It should be a clean movement, and that's usually around 90% of your max. Meaning, so if your true competition max is 300, a training max is going to be about 270 for you. And that's what these guys do. They hit training maxes over and over and over. So that they practice using good technique and speed and power for a single rep. And that's the whole point. It's about training that first rep heavy, that first rep clean, because that's the problem you run into with a lot of even triples and stuff when you get into powerlifting, is that people get really good at doing their second and third rep. It doesn't always translate into a good first rep always. It can be problematic. People got to learn to get good at hitting that first rep heavy, because that's all that matters for a max in competition. And so there's a difference between training those singles versus training doubles and triples. Doubles and triples are there for just general build-up. You really need to do a lot of singles if you want to get good at training maxes, and that's one reason, again, training maxes are so beneficial there. You're not doing it to show off. You're not doing it to show what you can do, and that's a big difference that people need to grasp. When you go to the gym, what's your goal? Get bigger and stronger usually, right? You're trying to build muscle, you're trying to build strength, you're trying to improve yourself. In what world does hitting a true max do that? It doesn't. I tell people when you go to the gym, your goal should be to build strength, not to demonstrate it. And some people say, well, I'm there to build muscle. Well, building muscle and building strength are kind of correlated. You can't separate the two. If you're getting stronger, you're gaining muscle. If you're gaining muscle, you're getting stronger. Think of it in those terms. You're in the gym to build something. You're not there to show off. If you're there to show off, you are being counterproductive with what you should actually be doing. And what I mean is you can't have both. If you're in there to just showboat and try to do maxes all the time, true maxes where you grind them out and everything, you need to understand you don't get stronger from doing true maxes. Why? Because you're training yourself to grind slow. You're not training yourself to get more powerful. They're usually an all-out effort. It doesn't recruit, as far as adaptive responses, any more muscle fibers than doing a training max. All right, because you're usually having to exert certain extra efforts. You're grinding, you're doing things, but it doesn't really get any more upper threshold fibers, and that's all the data has shown us that. We know that. But what it does do, it ingrains bad techniques sometimes, and it hammers your recovery. It exhausts your peripheral nervous system. If you're exhausting your peripheral nervous system, you're going to recover more slowly from that training session. You're going to recover more slowly. You're going to hurt your training and your progress over the next week. Coming in and maxing out at the gym, maxing out on your bench press to show off, could actually set you back an entire week. So think about it this way. If you come in and show off, a lot of these young kids do it, they want to max once a month at the gym, you're going to lose a week's worth of progress from doing that every month. So basically, you're only training your bench press, your chest, your triceps effectively 3 weeks out of the 4. And if you're doing that every month, you're losing a whole week every month. You're losing 12 weeks worth of training, stimulation, and adaptation and progress every single year from doing that. It's stupid. It's brain fucking dead. It's fucking retarded. Don't do it. All you're doing is hurting your recovery and hurting your ability to get better. When you're at the gym, you need to be there to get stronger. You need to be there to build strength, not demonstrate it. And I'll ask you a better question. What's more impressive to watch a guy come into the gym and consistently hit 3 to 5 reps with a relatively heavy weight with good technique, without breaking a sweat, without having to strain and scream and use shitty form on the last one, come in and repeatedly do 3 to 5 reps over and over and over with a heavier weight week after week, and you watch them just use good technique and rack it like it's nothing. Or the guy who comes in and lifts a little more weight than that, but who uses bad form and grinds and everything else and all of that. What's going to be more impressive if you're watching, even if you're wanting to show off, what do you think is more impressive? Watch a guy come in and hit 300 pounds with terrible form and grind it and be questionable, some questionably even meet legal, so that he can show off with a max, or if the same guy were to come in and do 265 for 3 to 5 reps every single week, day after day. When you see him at the gym, you look over and that guy's just repping it out, good technique, clean racking it. Who do you think is going to look more impressive to anyone who knows what they're looking at? Clearly that guy, because he's in there building some strength. He's not in here doing stupid stuff with just a little more weight. So even coming in and building strength can sometimes be more impressive for those observing it. And the thing is, you also put yourself to a higher risk of injury, because you guys are coming in, if you're coming in and maxing all the time, hitting true maxes and grinding stuff out, that's when you pull stuff, that's when you rip stuff. Because the bad form with the heaviest weight you can do, the form breaks down. Form breakdowns like that are what injure you. Why do you think you see so many people get hurt in competitions? See it all the time. The true maxes are where you tend to get hurt. Good technique with good form, with general buildup and slow progression with deloads and stuff, very rarely hurts people, as long as they're keeping good muscle balance, good technique, using good form. The right technique, injuries are fairly low. People are coming in and maxing out, they get injured. The same guys who train proper year-round still tend to get injured in competition, because those true maxes, they tend to hurt you. They can hurt you. That's where the injuries happen, and you see them a lot. So you've got all that to consider, and then what about the fact of, what if you decide you want to get into powerlifting and do a meet? You've been coming in and you've been training these maxes and hitting true maxes instead of competition maxes. What do you think happens? Hitting competition type maxes instead of training maxes, and you learn bad form. And then you come in and you find out when you go to a meet, the stuff you've been doing in the gym all this time, the habits you've learned, get you disqualified to meet. A lot of guys who don't do powerlifting don't know this, but did you know on any of your lifts, when you guys are used to grinding and the bar dips a little bit, video yourself. Did you know that if the bar dips just a half an inch on one side on the bench press or the squat or the deadlift, and a judge sees that happen, remember you got 3, sometimes up to 5 judges watching you, the different positions. Did you know that that lift is disqualified? It's red light. They don't count it. A lot of guys who don't compete don't know that. You're not allowed to do that in competition. The weight has to be smooth. If it stops, it can only stop briefly, and it can't dip at all. If any part of the bar, and there's people watching each side, if they see either side dip just a little bit visibly like that, they have to hit the red light button. You're disqualified. That lift doesn't count. So you guys who come in and you grind like that, you do know you're training yourself to allow the bar to dip and to do things that you're not strong enough to do, that will be disqualified in competition, because you're not strong enough to lift it and meet legal if the bar ever dips. A lot of guys don't realize that. They don't realize that If their ass comes off the bench, even a quarter of an inch, there's usually a judge watching your butt under there. If your butt lifts off the bench at all on the bench press, you're disqualified. If your foot moves at all from the time you unrack the bar till the time you re-rack the bar, you're disqualified. So a lot of you guys who are saying, well, I'll go do some powerlifting and show you guys. You need to be aware of those things. That if your foot shifts even a quarter of an inch or a half inch, a visible amount, at any point from the time you unrack till you re-rack, so you see guys who dance their feet, these are bad habits you guys are learning. Or you shift your feet a little bit when you slide on the bench, trying to grind out that rep. That's disqualifications at meet. That's not meet legal. You're not strong enough to actually lift the weight meet legal if your foot has to shift. You also can't bounce the weight off your chest. You actually have to touch your chest, and you can't press the weight on the bench press till the judge tells you to press. If you press before that, it's disqualified. So these little things these guys do, same thing on deadlifts. You see guys hitch on the deadlift. You see guys bend their knees just a little bit after the weight has started upward. That's a disqualification. That's not meet legal. You're not strong enough to lift the weight. A lot of little things like that guys aren't aware of, and they go to the gym and they do all these maxes to where they cheat the weight up. They do silly stuff to where the bar either dips and they're grinding these things out, or they hitch on the deadlift, or their feet shift when they grind to the side on the bench press. If you're doing any of that, you're going to be disqualified in competition. You're trying to lift more weight than you're even actually capable of lifting using the legal version of the exercise. And so that being said, you're learning bad habits. Every time you get under a really heavy load, you guys are coming in here doing bad habits instead of focusing on how much weight can I lift with good technique without the bar slowing down. That's the most max you should ever do in training. And you need to do that within inside of a system. You don't do that randomly. That needs to be programmed with either some sort of Bulgarian training or max effort training. When you're doing singles like that, the heaviest weight you can do with good technique and without the bar slowing is called a training max, and it needs to be programmed in your training. It's not stuff you come in and do randomly, because that will fatigue you also. It needs to be part of a training system. So as far as all this goes, true maxes, do they have a place? No, they don't have a place at all in training. They're nothing but ego lifting by little kids who actually aren't interested in getting better. And you want proof of that? Look at a lot of these young kids who come in there and they max out on their bench over and over and over all the time, and see how many of them never make any real progress. Stop and think about how many of them you observe over the years. It's bullshit. It's ego lifting, and it's counterproductive. And if you do decide to get into powerlifting, it very well could hurt you in the long term. So again, training maxes done inside the context of a properly programmed system are okay, but training maxes are not true maxes. They're not all-out effort. They shouldn't be exhausting you, and they shouldn't be grinding or slow down at any point. They're fast lifts for singles. Totally different animal than what most people are thinking of as maxing out. If you're not competing, don't max out. It's counterproductive to your actual goals of getting bigger and stronger. Has no place in your training other than trying to show off. And like I said before, what do you think's more impressive? Watching a guy lift a heavy weight for several reps consistently with beautiful technique, good power and speed, and rack it like it's nothing? Or for the same guy to come in and try to grind out with shitty form and bad technique, one rep with just a little more weight on it? I think the former is more impressive than the latter personally, because I see that and say that's a guy who's getting stronger. That's a guy who's putting in his work, who knows what he's doing. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.